The wind howled through the cracked wooden stalls of the dusty auction yard, carrying with it the sound of boots, whispers, and the low snort of restless horses. It wasn't cattle or land up for sale that day. It was a human soul. A young woman with tangled raven hair and torn dress stumbled forward, her wrists bound by coarse rope, her bare feet bruised from being dragged across the rocky ground. Her name was Clara, and her own brother had brought her here, not to save her, but to sell her like a mule. Her tear-streaked face lifted to the crowd, her hazel eyes wide with terror and shame as her brother shouted, "She's strong, she can work, cook, and clean. Starting price, $50. Laughter and cruel whistles followed. No one cared that she was trembling, no one cared that her heart was breaking. But in the back of the crowd, leaning against the post with a weathered hat shading his sharp eyes, stood a cowboy. His name was Caleb. Unlike the others, his stare wasn't hungry, it was hard, burning with quiet fury. Caleb had seen cruelty before on these plains, but what stood before him now made his knuckles whiten around the brim of his hat. Clara's brother yanked her by the arm to make her stand straighter, his voice harsh as he raised the price again. Caleb could see her trying to pull away, her lips trembling as she whispered, "Please, don't do this." But her brother only sneered. This wasn't a brother anymore, this was a man who had sold his soul for coins. Caleb stepped forward, boots thudding like thunder in the silent crowd. $100, his voice rang out, steady, commanding. The crowd turned. A few scoffed. One old rancher laughed. "You gonna waste good money on a broken thing, cowboy?" Caleb didn't answer. His eyes were locked on Clara. She froze, her breath catching, her heart hammering in her chest. Someone tried to outbid, more out of spite than need. But Caleb raised again, calm and unshakable. 200. A hush fell. That was more than the girl was worth in this cruel market. Her brother's greedy eyes widened. The deal was sealed faster than a rattlesnake strike. The rope was shoved into Caleb's hand like a transaction. But the moment the rope touched his palm, something shifted. He didn't hold it like a chain, he untied it. Clara stared at him, confused, watching the frayed rope fall to the dirt. "You're free now," Caleb said softly, but firmly. Her lips parted, no sound escaping. Just the trembling of someone who had been caged too long. But freedom wasn't that simple. The men around them grumbled, some cursed. "You paid for her," one of them spat. "She's yours." Caleb slowly turned, his jaw tight as steel. "No. She's mine because I claimed her as my own. And no one touches what's mine." His words weren't ownership. They were protection. A shield thrown around a fragile soul in a vicious world. Her brother tried to protest. "She's my sister," Caleb's hand shot out like lightning, gripping the man's collar, slamming him against the wooden post. "No brother sells his sister." "You're no kin to her now," Caleb growled, voice low and dangerous. The crowd stepped back. They all knew Caleb's reputation. He wasn't just any cowboy. He was the Iron Rider from the West, a man who'd once taken down 3 outlaws in a single night to protect a stranger. Her brother choked, humiliated, and Caleb tossed him aside like the dirt he was. Clara stumbled back, overwhelmed by everything happening too fast. She didn't know this man. She didn't know why he had done this. But for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel completely alone. Caleb placed his hat back on his head, extended a calloused hand, and said, "Come on. You're safe with me." She hesitated, then slowly placed her trembling hand into his. Her fingers were cold, delicate, and shaking. His grip was warm, steady, and sure. He led her out of that yard, away from the place where her dignity had been stripped. The whispers behind them didn't matter anymore. The deal was done. The girl was gone. Night fell over the wide plains as they rode on his chestnut stallion, her head resting lightly against his back. The sound of hooves like a promise echoing through the empty land. "Why did you save me?" she whispered finally, her voice cracking like dry wood. Caleb didn't turn around. Because I couldn't stand watching a good soul be crushed, he answered simply. She felt something stir inside her, something she thought had died long ago, hope. Days turned to weeks. Caleb brought her to his ranch. A quiet stretch of golden land with a river running through it. He gave her a warm bed, clean clothes. And never once treated her like something he bought. He gave her work, yes, but work that made her feel alive, not chained. She mended fences, learned to ride, found herself laughing again by the firelight. The other ranch hands respected her because Caleb made it clear, she wasn't a servant. She was family. One night, as the stars stretched wide and endless above them, Clara stood on the porch, the wind tangling her hair. Caleb joined her, silent as always, his presence enough to make her heart beat steady. You could have left me anywhere, she said softly. Why call me your own? Caleb leaned against the post, eyes on the horizon. Because sometimes, he said, voice deep, home ain't a place. It's someone who stands for you when no one else will. Tears welled in her eyes. Not from pain this time, but from something tender and new. She turned toward him, heart full. For the first time in years, she wasn't afraid. When word spread about the cowboy who had bought a woman only to set her free, some called him a fool, others called him a hero. But for Clara, he was the man who gave her life back. Trouble came again, not everything stays peaceful on the frontier. Her brother returned weeks later with men and guns, demanding her back. He wanted more money. Caleb stood on his porch, rifle in hand, eyes hard as granite. You come for her? He said slowly, you'll have to go through me. The men laughed at first. But they didn't laugh long. Caleb was no ordinary cowboy, he was a storm in boots. The standoff was short and brutal. He didn't flinch. Didn't step back, and in the end, her brother slunk away like the coward he was, leaving Clara behind forever. She watched him disappear down the dusty road, the weight of the past finally lifting from her chest. She turned to Caleb, tears streaming silently down her face. I don't have anywhere else to go, she whispered. He stepped closer, the brim of his hat casting a shadow over kind eyes. Then stay, he said simply. Stay, Clara. Build something here. Her heart thundered like a wild horse in her chest. For the first time, the word home didn't feel like a dream. It felt real. Months passed, and the ranch thrived. She learned to laugh again, to ride with the wind, to believe in herself. Caleb never tried to own her, he stood beside her. As partner, as friend, and eventually, as the man she came to love. The scars of her past didn't vanish overnight. But with him, they no longer defined her. They rode out at dawn, side by side. Two souls who had found each other in the unlikeliest of ways. And every night when the wind whispered through the valley, Clara would remember the day he paid her price, not to own her, but to free her. You saved me, she said one night, resting her head on his shoulder. Caleb smiled faintly beneath the stars. No, he said, you saved yourself. I just showed up. And so the girl who was once sold like a thing became the woman who ruled the ranch with fire in her heart. She was no longer a victim. She was Clara, the woman the cowboy called his own. Not by chains, but by choice, trust, and love. Weeks turned to calm days on the ranch, where fear slowly melted into trust. But one night, danger returned as the brother came back with armed men, demanding what he'd lost. The cowboy stood strong at the porch, rifle steady, voice firm. You'll have to go through me, he warned. The men backed down, shadows swallowed their pride. Under the stars, safety finally felt real. And a broken soul found a place to belong.